When I look at Wiggins, what I see is athleticism.
And now Andrew Wiggins in transition.
I see speed. I see heart. I see somebody that wants it.
With the first pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Andrew Wiggins.
Do you even want Andrew Wiggins starting on your team? I wouldn't.
Wiggins is a bad basketball player.
Butler was concerned about Wiggins' work ethic and his approach on the defensive end.
I am not buying the Timberwolves at all, and I am all the way out on Andrew Wiggins.
Wiggins has been incredibly impressive.
Goes by Butler.
This is a dream come true.
Andrew Wiggins, to me, is in the perfect situation.
I just wanted to prove everyone wrong, and now I'm a world champion.
When discussing who the most hyped up prospects in NBA history are, a few names immediately come to mind. Players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaq all had high hopes on them placed from the jump. For the top picks in the NBA draft, most fans will remember them as either one of two things: an underwhelming bust or a star who met or exceeded their expectations. Players like Greg Oden or Anthony Bennett are scoffed at, being looked down upon as nothing more than wasted opportunities by the teams that drafted them. On the other hand, the aforementioned stars like LeBron and Tim Duncan are praised for delivering their respective teams' championships. What isn't mentioned though is the gray area in between a bust and a star. Players that aren't necessarily good enough to warrant drafting them number one, but also aren't poor enough to be labeled a bust by the NBA world. Andrew Wiggins is one of those rare cases. Throughout high school and into college, Wiggins was nicknamed Maple Jordan, with superstar aspirations placed on him. He was compared to Tracy McGrady, Kobe, and even LeBron. Teams blatantly tanked for him. He was the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that would make all of the losing worthwhile. Yet, if we fast forward to the present day, Andrew Wiggins and his resume don't exactly match up with the initial expectations placed on him. One All-Star appearance, one championship, and one Rookie of the Year. Decent accolades for sure. Most players never make it this far. But is this worthy of the number one pick? Especially when taking into account how much hype Wiggins had upon entering the league. Wiggs has always been a productive basketball player. In fact, through the first few seasons of his career, it can be argued that he did live up to the hype and was on the right trajectory towards stardom. But just as quickly as Wiggins rose towards the sun, he came crashing down back to reality. More and more NBA fans began turning on him and his game, and the Timberwolves soon gave up on him. The story could have ended here, with Andrew Wiggins doomed to a watery grave, being remembered as nothing more than a disappointment who would never contribute to winning basketball. But then, things changed. With a bit of luck, some hard work, and a mentality switch, Andrew Wiggins revived his career with the Golden State Warriors, winning the 2022 championship on top of it. This moment perfectly represented what it means to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Andrew Wiggins is a player of many labels. Currently, he's known as a champion, an all-star, and a gifted athlete, but before, he was known as soft, lazy, and a disappointment. What did he do to change this narrative, and how did he salvage his career? To find out, we have to do a deep dive into one of the most polarizing stories in NBA history. When you look at some of the best players to come out of the 2014 NBA draft, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Zach LaVine, it's hard to fathom that at one point, Andrew Wiggins was considered better than all of them. High school was where Wiggins peaked in terms of excitement. He was ranked number 1 by ESPN as the best player in the country. Fast forward to college at the University of Kansas, and it was he and his fellow teammate Joel Embiid who were the two highest ranked prospects. Once Embiid suffered a foot injury before the draft, Wiggins rose to the unequivocal top dog. Wiggs was seen as a young talent with sky-high potential, standing at 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan. Wiggins had all of the physical intangibles needed to be a superstar. With a bit of added muscle and some hard work, he could achieve anything he wanted to. This was the mindset scouts had regarding Andrew Wiggins during his days as a Jayhawk, and the Cleveland Cavaliers felt the same way. They skipped on Embiid and chose Andrew Wiggins to be their savior with the #1 pick. In all of the drafts from 2000 through 2020, every player who was selected #1 overall stayed with the team that picked them, except in 2014. Andrew Wiggins' tenure as a Cavalier was quite short-lived. He remained with the squad for around 2 months before being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Cavs had signed LeBron James in free agency, and Cleveland didn't want to wait on the rookie to develop. They needed to win ASAP. A testament to how valuable Wiggins appeared as a prospect was what the Timberwolves were willing to give up for him. They traded one of the greatest players in their franchise's history in Kevin Love for the rights to Wiggs, putting all of their eggs in the basket of an unproven college kid. What many forget about this deal is that there were tons of critics claiming the Cavs had made a huge mistake by trading Wiggins. Many in the NBA media world believed Wiggs could be the modern-day Scottie Pippen to LeBron. Needless to say, Andrew Wiggins had quite the expectations to fulfill. Through year 1 of his rookie season, though, he checked off every box. Wiggins' rookie season saw him play all 82 games, scoring 17 points on average with 5 boards. His Timberwolves won a ridiculously low 16 games, but that didn't stop hype from surrounding number 22. Wiggins was a lethal offensive player, scoring 20 or more points 31 times, and leading all rookies in points per game. He often broke social media with his high-flying dunks. He was unafraid when attacking the basket. With the number 2 and 3 picks in Jabari Parker and Joel Embiid injured, all eyes were on Wiggs, and he did not disappoint. His battles against stars in the league, like LeBron James, were often heavily focused on. Those who were watching it felt like they were witnessing the present and the future of the NBA duel it out. That's not to say Wiggins was perfect though. His scoring was exciting, but it rarely translated to wins, and his efficiency was also on the questionable side. These flaws are common for a majority of rookies though, and were ignored by most fans. He won the Rookie of the Year award with ease, a perfect start that all but confirmed the general consensus. He would be a superstar, and this was just the beginning. Wiggins' sophomore season saw his offense take another leap. He developed into a 20 points per game scorer at the age of 20. He also became the 4th youngest player to reach 3,000 points, and earned the respect of multiple NBA legends like Kobe Bryant. When Wiggs and Kobe dueled, it was the student versus the teacher battling. Wiggs hit a fall-away mid-range shot over Bryant, and told him he learned that move from him, prompting a smile from the Mamba. Moments like these were the writing on the wall for fans. How could Andrew Wiggins not be a future superstar? Wiggs and his fellow #1 pick teammate, Karl Anthony Towns, were expected to bring Minnesota their first ever playoff appearance since 2004. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. Andrew Wiggins wasn't perfect though. He was still inefficient. His team had won just 29 games, and his defense was mediocre. But nobody cared about that. He was oozing potential. His teammates believed he could be a future MVP, and NBA fans thought he could be the next Kobe or Jordan. But what his supporters hadn't taken into account was that just because he had potential didn't mean he was going to reach it. Through year 1 and 2, Wiggins had checked all of the boxes that were desired, and there was little doubt surrounding his future. This upcoming 3rd year was the one where fans really expected Wiggs to take that all-star leap. However, the 2016-17 season saw no all-star appearance for Andrew Wiggins. Rather, the excitement in the air that had followed Wiggins for his entire basketball career started to decline into concern. If you just look at the stat sheet, the 2016-17 season for Andrew Wiggins was great. He averaged a career high in points and played all 82 games. But if you actually watched him play, the eye test wasn't as promising. Wiggins was still horrible on the defensive end, leaving many of his biggest fans frustrated. How is it possible that a 6'7" forward with a 7-foot wingspan was so uninspired on defense? His rebounding was pitiful for a small forward, with many questioning if that struggle was correlated to a lack of effort. His most redeemable quality, his scoring at 23 points per game, came on nearly 20 shots per game. His efficiency was middling, and he ranked top 20 in the league in usage percentage. Wiggins was a one-dimensional player. The Timberwolves, who were expected to make a playoff run with their new head coach Tom Thibodeau, crumbled, winning just 2 more games than the prior year, and finishing with an uninspiring 31 dubs. Anyone who hinted at possible criticism towards Wiggs was ignored though. After all, he was just 21 years old. The potential for stardom was still more than possible. The Timberwolves had now reached year 13 with no playoff appearance, and their front office was beginning to become impatient. They wanted to target a star that could help bring all of this together, and one disgruntled player from Chicago soon emerged as the perfect candidate: Jimmy Butler. If there was any one moment where the hype in Andrew Wiggins' Timberwolves career peaked, it was the summer of 2017. He was in an ideal situation team-wise. He had an ascending all-star level teammate in Karl Anthony Towns, and another all-star in Jimmy Butler recently acquired in a trade. Butler rose into NBA stardom through sheer hard work. To fans of the T-Wolves, Jimmy appeared like a fitting mentor and personality that could help Wiggins evolve into the best version of himself. The Timberwolves had a new big 3 in town, and now the goal was simple. It was time to win. But first, Wiggins needed his money. That's right. The rising star was due for a new contract, and he knew exactly what he wanted. Wiggins said he was worth nothing less than a max contract. The Timberwolves sat and thought about it for 2 months. Based on potential, a max contract could be worth it if Wiggins played up to his ceiling. On the other hand, he was still one-dimensional, lacked any improvement in rebounding and playmaking since entering the league, and was inefficient. The Timberwolves analyzed the situation carefully for weeks. This could have massive effects on the team's future. They had to be smart about this. Then a light bulb went off. The Timberwolves went to Wiggins and told him, "Hey Andrew, we'll give you all this money, but you need to pinky promise that you'll be committed to improving your game." Wiggins, who is no fool, said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" The two sides shook hands, and Andrew Wiggins was given $148 million.
Oh wait, you serious?
You heard that correctly. The deciding factor in this contract negotiation was that Wiggins had to promise he'd be dedicated to improving his game. A max extension had been handed to Andrew Wiggins, raising his expectations to even higher levels. Not only was he the #1 pick compared to Kobe and LeBron, not only was he perhaps the most important player in the Timberwolves' new Big Three, but now he was getting paid the big bucks on top of all of that. He had huge shoes to fill, and it was time to live up to the hype. The 2017-18 season for Andrew Wiggins represented the rose-colored glasses being removed. The NBA world began turning on him. His scoring regressed. He went from 23 points per game to 17, while his field goal percentage and 3-point percentage both dipped by 2%. He was still a traffic cone on defense, with zero excuse for being so. He had all of the physical attributes needed to be an elite defender, but had shown little to no improvement since his rookie season. His rebounding and playmaking both remained lackluster on top of all of this, leaving many to wonder, was Andrew Wiggins' ceiling lower than initially perceived? With Jimmy Butler, the T-Wolves had a 37-22 record. Without him, they were 10-13. Wiggins didn't give the Timberwolves wins. Butler did. By the time the 2018 playoffs rolled around, Minnesota was buried in round 1 by the #1 seeded Houston Rockets in 5. This series was an absolute disaster for Wiggs. He averaged 16 points per game on 44% shooting from the field, often attempting more shots than Butler and Cat. This is when the tide began turning on the fourth-year man. The excuses were beginning to run out. A portion of spectators believed the fit between Wiggins and Butler was poor, and that was the cause of Andrew's struggles. Others thought he just needed another year to improve. Some fans weren't that forgiving though, and murmurs of Andrew Wiggins being a bust started to grow louder and louder. A shocking allegation at first, but upon further reflection, it wasn't all that unreasonable. He was the #1 pick on a max contract expected to produce at a superstar level, and he had failed to do so 4 years in. The focus in Minnesota would turn away from number 22 though. Rather, all the attention went to his teammate in what would go down as one of the biggest media circuses in recent NBA history. In the fall of 2018, Jimmy Butler, the team's best player and all-star, wanted out. But why? His reasoning is a combination of both his troubles with the Timberwolves management and their players. Butler saw Wiggins and his max contract and felt irritated. In his words, Wiggins was the most God-gifted player on the team.
I'm not the most talented player. Who's the most talented player on our team? Cat. Who's the most God-gifted player on our teams? Wiggs. But like, who plays the hardest? Me.
Butler, who had to scrape his way to the top being the 30th pick in the draft, was frustrated that Wiggins didn't show the same hardworking mentality that he did. Throughout the 2017-18 season, Butler questioned Wiggins' work ethic and his approach on defense. Instead of Wiggins improving with a tough-minded veteran pushing him, drama and beef grew a rift between the two that never got fixed. Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns did not respond well to Butler's attempts at motivating them. Butler infamously teamed up with the third stringers during an October 2018 practice and beat Wiggins' team, further asserting his dominance as the unequivocal top dog on the squad. Once Butler requested a trade and was shipped to Philly, the nightmare was over. But at what cost? Not even Jimmy Butler could save Wiggins' game. Was this just who he was? An overpaid, lazy, inefficient waste of a #1 pick? The 2018-19 season didn't change anyone's mind. Wiggins' reputation deteriorated. One of the lowest points of his NBA career came in a December 2018 game against the Atlanta Hawks. Wiggins first forgot to wear his jersey before the game started, prompting many to reiterate how little he seemed to care about basketball. Minnesota lost this game, in large part due to Wiggins missing 2 key free throws in overtime. He was booed mercilessly by the crowd. He wasn't just booed for these misses. Rather, he was booed for the complete disappointment he'd been in his career thus far. His defensive woes, his lack of effort, his questionable work ethic, all of it was encapsulated in these 2 missed free throws. The Timberwolves needed him, and he let them down. A common theme since he arrived in the league. The T-Wolves took an L, and this is when many fans waved the white flag. Maple Jordan was a sinking ship, and that ship was appearing unsalvageable. They could trade him, but who would be willing to take on such a behemoth of a contract? For now, no teams would, leaving Wiggins stuck in Minnesota for the indefinite future. After trading Jimmy Butler, the T-Wolves showed little improvement, winning just 36 games in the 2018-19 season. 5 years with Wiggins, 1 playoff appearance, while his teammate in Karl Anthony Towns continued to ascend into all-star status. Wiggins failed to achieve such elite accolades. When former Timberwolf legend Kevin Garnett interviewed both Cat and Wiggins in late 2018, he grilled Wiggs for his lack of all-star appearances.
I'm mad at you though, you know why I'm mad at you, right? Yeah, we're gonna talk about it. When we gonna be an all-star, dog? When we get an all-star? Real talk.
Next year is a motivation for it.
Really?
Yeah, next year. That's what I'm aiming towards.
That's what's up, man.
All Timberwolves fans could do was roll their eyes. The question of if the Timberwolves should keep Wiggins wasn't even debatable anymore. They had to get rid of him, and waited patiently for a team to take the bait. In the 2019-20 season, after starting 10-8, the Timberwolves went on a huge losing streak, putting a target on Maple Jordan's head once more. Wiggs was on the trade block for months, until finally, one battered and bruised franchise of former glory emerged from the smoke: the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors were a team that had won 3 championships in the past 5 years, but unfortunately, their winning past seemed to be just that, a fading memory. They had acquired point guard D'Angelo Russell in the offseason to a max contract, someone who Minnesota had always been interested in. The Warriors were looking to move D'Lo, but wanted some compensation first. Minnesota jumped on the opportunity, offering up Andrew Wiggins and a top 3 protected first-round pick for D'Angelo Russell. The Warriors agreed. This trade is a true testament to how low Wiggs' value was. Minnesota, one of the worst teams in the league at the time, gave up a nearly unprotected pick to get rid of him. Andrew Wiggins' time as a Timberwolf was over, and he left Minnesota being laughed at. The Warriors were mocked for this trade. Andrew Wiggins was viewed as an overpaid, broken player with a losing attitude. Him as the missing piece for the Warriors? Please. That was the common belief among fans when this trade went down. But as we all know in the present day, that doubt ended up being a false judgment. So what happened? How did Andrew Wiggins evolve his game so much to the point where he ended up fitting flawlessly with the Warriors? Some say it was Steph Curry's gravity, the Warriors system, or just plain luck. The reality is that Andrew Wiggins was the reason for his success in Golden State. All it took was a mentality change. After the trade, Wiggins played just 12 games with Golden State before the season was suspended in March of 2020. During the offseason, Steve Kerr was consistently telling Wiggs that his defense needed to improve. He challenged the 25-year-old to become an all-defensive player. Wiggins accepted this and began putting in the work. In his first full Golden State Warrior campaign in 2020-21, he turned into an impressive two-way wing. Wiggins, now nicknamed Two-Way Wiggs, had his strongest defensive season yet, posting a career-best 114.4 defensive rating. Wiggins consistently held stars like Kawhi Leonard, Jason Tatum, and Chris Middleton to below-average shooting nights. On offense, Wiggs was remarkably efficient, shooting 38% from downtown and 47% from the field, both being career highs. His shot selection had improved greatly, and he was finally exposed to a winning culture. Steph, Draymond, and Steve Kerr were exactly who he needed to take his game to a higher level. However, only Warriors fans saw and acknowledged these improvements. Once the 2021 play-in arrived and Golden State was eliminated by the Memphis Grizzlies, it was nothing but jokes and criticism aimed towards Wiggins on social media. He shot 3 of 9 in the fourth quarter and overtime, breaking crucial shots that Golden State needed him to make. In the NBA, one could play well the entire regular season, but if they struggle when it matters most, that's what the world will remember. It was another season for Andrew Wiggins that ended in a forgettable manner. Only this time, something was different. Wiggins was about to take his biggest jump in play yet at the age of 26, and would permanently etch his name in the NBA history books forever. Andrew Wiggins and the Golden State Warriors had a smashing campaign in the 2021-22 season. Wiggins had his best season ever, becoming a first-time All-Star starter. An achievement that he had coveted all his career was finally accomplished when being selected as the #1 pick. One of the most basic achievements that everyone expects is an All-Star appearance. Wiggins had done it in an unconventional but respectable manner. His defense took yet another leap. He was now at a 108.4 defensive rating. he could lock up some of the game's best stars. This is what Wiggins' critics had been yearning to see for so long. He had all of the talent in the world with his wingspan and height, and now he was using it to his advantage. But of course, only Warriors fans truly acknowledged these achievements. There were no all-defensive team selections given to Wiggs, which he took personally. The postseason was where the world was watching, and Wiggins had a fantastic run. The 2022 playoffs saw Andrew Wiggins evolve into a true two-way monster. He averaged 16.5 points per game on 47% shooting from the field, grabbing 7.5 rebounds per game, which may have been the most significant stat. One of his biggest faults he had as a player was his lack of rebounding, despite standing 6'7" with elite hops. Any conversations regarding this topic were silenced during this postseason run. Wiggins gave it his all, crashing the glass.
Especially when we played small in the Memphis series, and I had to rebound. And I'm in the rebound. I'm like, this ain't that hard. Like I can rebound like this. I can do this. Like I can't see. I'm never gonna average 4 rebounds again.
He had the highest plus minus of any player in the 2022 playoffs, earning a plus 140 in 22 games played. Wiggs' impact was especially felt in the Western Conference Finals and NBA Finals, where he guarded two of the best players in the game extremely well. In round 3, Wiggs guarded Luka Doncic. Luka shot a below average 41% from the field in this series, to go along with a putrid 25% three-point shooting in games 4 and 5. On top of this, he also averaged 4 turnovers per game. Wiggins deserves a heap of credit for stepping up to the challenge and containing one of the league's most difficult to guard players. Up next in the NBA Finals was the Boston Celtics, who the Warriors beat in 6. Andrew Wiggins had the series of his life on both sides of the floor. On offense, he scored 18 points per game, his best showcase coming in a pivotal Game 5. In this game, with the series tied at 2, Wiggins poured in 26 points and 13 boards. This was the level of production that was initially expected from him as the #1 pick. He put the Warriors on his back, leading them in scoring and carrying them to the W. On defense, Jason Tatum was absolutely locked up by two-way Wiggs. Wiggins held the superstar forward to a 21 points per game average on a horrendous 36% field goal shooting. He forced Tatum into turnovers and inefficient jump shots, snatching his soul and deflating any momentum that the Celtics attempted to build. If you had told an NBA scout in 2014 that Andrew Wiggins would be the second option on a championship team, they would have undoubtedly agreed. But if you would then detail the nightmare career path he had gone through before becoming a Warrior, the scout would raise an eyebrow. In 2014, Andrew Wiggins was viewed as a future star. In 2019, he was looked at as a role player. In the present day, he's a combination of both. And that's not a bad thing. Did he live up to those Kobe Bryant expectations that were placed on him back in 2014? Definitely not. But that shouldn't be how his career is looked at. What should be highlighted most is that Wiggins redeemed himself. But why was he so effective in Golden State? A few reasons. As a Warrior, Wiggins is not the #1 option on offense like he was in Minnesota. The Warriors' ball movement anchored by Steph Curry gave Wiggs easier scoring opportunities that he was able to take advantage of. Andrew benefits from an offensive style that doesn't force him to create. He's always had a poor handle, and the less he uses it, the more efficient his game is. The expectations as a Warrior were also far lower for him than the past. For the Timberwolves, Wiggins was supposed to be a superstar. Having to carry that pressure on his shoulders was a burden that he could not handle. In Golden State, he was simply asked to be a 3-and-D wing. Wiggs took this a step further by becoming a lockdown defender on some of the game's best stars. Lastly, Steve Kerr encouraging him throughout the 2020 offseason to improve his defense was the push the youngster needed. The role he was given as a Warrior fit him perfectly. A small forward that needed to focus on defense, rebounding, hitting the three ball, and throwing down poster dunks.
Wiggins still looking for his first field goal. That'll do it. Wiggins.
Wiggs being traded from Minnesota to Golden State was the wake-up call that he needed. He went to a team with championship aspirations, and they weren't going to tolerate him not playing up to his potential. Wiggins was condemned in Minnesota for his poor shot selection, bad rebounding, and unacceptably dreadful defense. As a Warrior, he fixed all of these issues, earning an All-Star appearance and a ring as the award for doing so. Not every #1 pick will have a picture-perfect happy story. Some, like Andrew Wiggins, will face initial conflict and struggle. What matters most is how one responds to this adversity. He could have either embraced being called a bust or tried to turn his misfortune around. In just a few years, Andrew Wiggins turned from a wasted talent to an integral piece on a championship team, proving that with enough work, you can achieve anything.